Would you like to farm a lot of raw gold in Mist of Pandaria? In this video, I'll share my 3 favorite spots as of right now, where I'm making between 2 to 3,000 gold an hour without using the auction house. The first location is a dungeon in Uldum. Why I prefer to dungeon farm is because you can do this without any competition. And now that we can get to level 90, Cataclysm dungeons is all of a sudden something we can also solo. The first pull here requires you to pretty much also pull everything in this area and drag all of them to the first boss. Yeah, if your gear isn't that great, you might separate it into 2, but as a tank it should definitely be possible just with normal dungeon gear. In this case, I'm using heroic gear myself. What you need to pay attention to here is basically just the shockwave and also other damage abilities on the ground, but it is rather easy to solo this on your own. Why I prefer Cataclysm over Wrath of the Lich King dungeons is because in Mist of Pandaria our damage is now way higher, therefore we can pretty much also do what we did at level 85 in Wrath of the Lich King dungeons, but this time in Cataclysm. Whenever we are for example getting green or rare items, these are also rendering for way more compared to a rare or green item from Wrath of the Lich King. We're talking about pretty much twice as much, which is why this is way better. What's also important to highlight is that when I tested all the different Wrath of the Lich King dungeons, I also soloed most of these in 3 to 4 minutes. In the end, it would result in me being locked out of dungeon farming, and this will have a negative impact on the gold per hour we can expect to make. This is yet another reason for doing Cataclysm dungeons, as those usually takes between 6 to 10 minutes. At this area, we are doing yet another big pull. Depending on your gear, you could just finish them off here, or if you have decent gear, you could also pull the boss and then finish off everything as quickly as possible. Why I'm saying as quickly as possible is because when you move into phase 2 of this fight, you will also be transitioned into another phase, or whatever we call it. In other words, you need to make sure you're killing all the trash creatures before this happens, or they will evade and you will have to do a big pull once again. Now we just have the final boss, and depending on your session time, in this case I'm close to 6 minutes, then I would simply just finish off the final boss as well. But if we are looking at a session that is currently between 8 to 10 minutes, I would just reset and go again, as this will be more efficient gold per hour compared to finishing off the final boss. The reason for this being that the final encounter has a couple of different phases that usually also takes quite a bit of time. The next one is also from Cataclysm, this time Grim Patrol. And here we will also be doing some rather massive pulls and finishing off the whole dungeon. But for this to be efficient, you would also like to be in a group with one of your other characters, so at the end you can log out, reset the dungeon and log back in to be taken to the entrance. Simply because at the end of this dungeon there's not going to be an easy way to get back and reset. In Cataclysm you use to free the drakes, ride on them and use their abilities to also do a lot of damage to all these enemies I'm about to pull. But because we can now do a lot more damage by ourselves and we can do these massive pulls, then it's more efficient just to take care of everything yourself instead of using the dragons. However, if you're not playing a tanky class like I am, well, then it could be worth to spend a couple of minutes on those dragons and reduce the health of most of these enemies by 50%, so it will be easier to also take care of them. For those of you with skinning, you can also be skinning a lot of these creatures, so if a leather is expensive on the auction house and you would like to use the auction house, then you could also try to do this to increase the gold you make. Of course, all the rare and green items and cloth could also be sold on the auction house, as it's going to grant you a lot more compared to just 2 or 3,000 gold an hour. In Grim Patrol, there isn't that many mechanics to pay attention to. If you find it too difficult, well, then you just reduce the amount of creatures you pull at the same time. And yeah, you probably don't pull all of the enemies here and then the boss at the same time. You would like to take care of all the trash and then you could pull the boss. But as you get used to the pull more and more and also getting better gear, well, then it will definitely be possible to pull everything in this room as well. What I also like to do is to use a flask that lasts for at least an hour. So if I need more damage, I could go for more strength, agility or intellect, or if I need more health, I would just pop a flask that increases my stamina. These flasks will make a huge difference, especially if your gear isn't too great. You can also use potions in between, so for example, increasing your run speed with a swiftness potion or any healing potion or other things that improves your character's performance. In my previous raw gold making video, there's also been quite a few comments about people noticing they like to do old classic and Burning Crusade raids. Why? Well, then you won't just be doing the same dungeon over and over. And yeah, this can be quite efficient, as you can get transmorphs, raw gold from the bosses, and those are actually dropping quite a bit, and also pets you can sell on the auction house. Some of them selling for a couple of thousands of gold, and others all the way up to around 10,000 gold. So yeah, if you prefer to farm transmorph and not just the same dungeon over and over, then you could honestly just be farming the classic and Burning Crusade raids. However, don't forget that each of these raids also has a logout, so you can only do them once a week. But then again, with all the raids in the game, there's going to be plenty of things to be enjoying. Alright, so when you get to this location, you will also be fighting the final encounter in the dungeon. But sadly, I don't find a way for me to get back to the entrance without having to log out, use an alt character, and reset the dungeon and log back into my main, or well, the character I'm currently farming on. So if you have a better strategy yourself, feel free to post this in a comment below the video. In the pre-patch, I used to farm Karasan quite a bit. Yeah, making close to 2,300 gold an hour on many different classes. But with a monk at level 90, I've made sure to increase this even further, and now I'm usually making around 3,000 gold an hour. For those of you wondering, I'm only pulling the trash creatures, so I try to avoid any bosses. If I accidentally pull a boss, yeah, I would definitely reset, or will maybe even die or run out. Because if you get locked out, you won't be able to reset and do these massive pulls. In the pre-patch, I did these pulls on my Feral Druid, but I feel like Monk is just a bit better, especially because some of these creatures can stun, and you have a buff you can activate to also reduce stun durations. On top of this, you have your roll, so you can quickly travel around. You have your keg for pulling. Yeah, I just feel like this is better compared to playing any other tanky class. For those of you not playing a tanky class, I would instead clear the whole raid, and the same case with all the other classic and Burning Crusade raids if possible. Yeah, maybe even some of the Wrath of the Lich King ones as well. However, some of them are also quite difficult to do. But this is because if you can't do massive pulls, you won't be making a lot of raw gold from something like this, and this is where killing the bosses becomes way better, or well, more efficient for a class that is not capable of tanking. This is also my first level 90 raw gold making video in Mist of Pandaria, and in the future I'll definitely also be working on a part 2, yeah, maybe even release more of these videos if there's a high interest. For those of you being a member of the channel, soon you can also look forward to my first Mist of Pandaria investment video, where I share everything I'm currently buying and what I've already spent 150,000 gold into. Hopefully this will also turn out to be making me close to 300 to 400,000 gold. In original Mist of Pandaria, I did the exact same, so hopefully it will actually be working this time around as well. Alright, back to the Karasan farm. When we do the last big pull here, it's gonna be important you finish them off in this room. If you continue to drag them out of the room and to the entrance, well, then they will also evade. Outside the raid, there will also be an NPC you can speak to, where you can render everything, if you don't have the render mount. This also marks the ending of part 1. In part 2, I'll try to be more efficient, or will find even better farms that will hopefully also make you more gold per hour. If you would like to get notified when I post part 2, then I would also highly recommend you to subscribe to the channel. And on my channel, you can also find many other useful Mist of Pandaria guides. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day. Peace.